My husband, Alex, said goodbye to go to his hometown to visit his mother. But when I called him, he forgot to hang up the phone, and I heard my husband say, "Just wait for the $1 million check from her father to clear. I'll leave that stupid wife of mine with nothing, and we'll get married and raise this child together." I went into shock. It turned out my husband was with my best friend, who was pregnant with his child. In that moment, my world seemed to fall apart, but I didn't just stand by. I would make sure they regretted this betrayal. The morning atmosphere in the sprawling house was warm and peaceful, as if no storm was about to break. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, illuminating a living room decorated with designer furniture. There, Sophia was busy folding her husband Alex's clothes. She performed her task with care and affection. Today, Alex was leaving for his hometown in Ohio to visit his mother, Carol, who they said was gravely ill. As a devoted wife, Sophia naturally felt concerned about her mother-in-law's condition. She actually wanted to accompany him, but Alex forbade it, arguing that the road trip would be exhausting and he didn't want to see her tired, especially since Sophia had just recovered from a mild cold. Sophia obeyed her husband, trusting that Alex cared deeply for her health. Alex came out of the bathroom with his hair still damp. His face looked fresh, but there was a hint of sadness that he seemed to be deliberately displaying. He approached Sophia, who was placing the last garment into a leather duffel bag. Sophia looked at her husband tenderly, stroking his arm to give him strength. She knew how much Alex loved his mother, and the news of her illness must have affected him deeply. Sophia prepared some snacks and a bottle of water for him so he wouldn't go hungry on the road. She made sure his wallet, his phone, and everything necessary were safely packed in the bag. There wasn't a hint of suspicion in her heart. To her, Alex was the perfect husband, hardworking and loving to his family. During their 3 years of marriage, Alex had always been sweet and had never shown any strange behavior. As they said goodbye on the porch, Alex hugged Sophia tightly, as if he found it hard to leave her alone for a few days. He kissed her forehead for a long time, asking Sophia to take care of herself, to lock the gate properly, and not to wait up for him if he returned late the day after tomorrow. Sophia nodded obediently. She slipped a sum of cash into his jacket pocket, saying it was to buy fruit or medicine for Carol. Alex smiled slightly, thanking her in a tone that sounded sincere, and then got into his car. Sophia stood on the doorstep, waving until her husband's car disappeared around the corner of the street in their upscale suburb. Her heart suddenly felt empty, but she pushed the feeling aside, praying for her husband to arrive safely at his destination and for her mother-in-law to recover soon. The wall clock ticked on, turning morning into afternoon and afternoon into evening. Sophia spent her time reading a book in the living room and tending to some plants in the backyard. When the sun began to set, nostalgia and anxiety started to creep in. By her calculations, Alex should have been close to arriving in his hometown. Sophia decided to call her husband just to make sure he was okay and that the trip had gone smoothly. She picked up her phone from the coffee table, found her husband's contact, and pressed the call button. Several rings sounded before he finally answered. Alex's voice was noisy on the other end. His breathing was a bit heavy, as if he were walking fast or lifting something heavy. Alex responded to Sophia's greeting in a somewhat hurried tone. He said he had just arrived and the reception there was bad, so he had to hang up to help some relatives who were taking care of Carol. Sophia, understanding, immediately agreed. She didn't want to bother her husband, who was focused on his mother. Sophia said her goodbyes and waited for Alex to hang up the phone. But this is where the strange thing happened. The call didn't disconnect. It seemed Alex had forgotten to press the red button, or his phone's screen had been accidentally touched, keeping the call active without him realizing it. Sophia was about to hang up from her end, but her finger stopped when she heard a rustling sound followed by the sound of a car door closing. Apparently, Alex hadn't arrived at his mother's house yet, or perhaps he was somewhere else. Sophia brought the phone back to her ear. Curiosity began to take over. She heard the sound of footsteps on a tile floor, not the sound of a dirt path or the asphalt of a small town. Then she heard a laugh that was very familiar to her. It was Alex's laugh, but not a sad or worried laugh like the one he had shown that morning. It was a liberated laugh, a laugh full of triumph that sounded strange and terrifying to Sophia at that moment. Sophia's heart began to pound. A bad feeling suddenly washed over her. She heard Alex speaking loudly. His voice was as clear as if he had left the phone on a table right in front of him. Alex said he could finally break free from the exhausting performance of the whole day. Sophia frowned, not understanding what he meant by performance, but the next sentence that came out of her husband's mouth was like a lightning bolt on a clear day, destroying all the trust Sophia had built over the years. Alex said in a dismissive tone that someone had to be patient until the $1 million check from Sophia's father cleared. Alex bluntly stated his plan to leave Sophia as soon as they had the money in their hands. The words "that stupid wife of mine" flowed smoothly from the lips of the man who had kissed her forehead tenderly that very morning. Sophia's chest tightened, her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, she wanted to curse, but her voice seemed to disappear, swallowed by an overwhelming shock. Before she could process the pain, she heard another woman's voice responding to Alex. That voice was so familiar. A voice that often accompanied her in her daily life. The voice she had entrusted her secrets to. It was the voice of Ashley, her best friend. Ashley laughed heartily, confirming Alex's words and calling Sophia a real idiot for not realizing what was happening behind her back. Sophia felt her world collapsing. The friend she trusted, the woman she often helped financially, turned out to be a venomous snake strangling her marriage. Sophia's tears began to stream down her cheeks, but she held back her sobs with all her might so they wouldn't be heard. Her trembling hand quickly pressed the record button on her phone's screen. She needed proof. She had to be strong. The conversation on the other end was becoming more and more heartbreaking. Alex could be heard coddling Ashley, asking her about the state of her pregnancy. This new revelation made Sophia feel nauseous. Ashley was pregnant with Alex's child. They were talking about their future, about the luxury house they would buy, the international vacations, and how they would raise this child together using Sophia's father's money. They were celebrating their betrayal over the suffering of Sophia, whom they considered stupid and naive. Sophia heard Alex say that he was sick of pretending to be a devoted and faithful husband in front of her. He was tired of listening to her father's lectures on business and ethics. Alex confessed that the only reason he endured it was for the inheritance and the injection of funds that Sophia's father had promised for a fake project Alex had presented. Meanwhile, Ashley asked Alex to spend more time with her because she didn't want her child to be born without a father by its side. Ashley even mocked Sophia's style, which she considered outdated and boring, unlike her, who always looked attractive in Alex's eyes. Every word that came out of their mouths was a dagger, stabbing deeper and deeper into Sophia's heart. Sophia's body slid to the floor, leaning against the living room sofa that now felt cold and strange. She hugged her knees with one hand while the other still held the phone that was recording all this filth. She heard the clinking of glasses. Perhaps they were toasting to celebrate their evil plan. There was no alcohol, maybe just juice or tea, but the celebration was just as profane in Sophia's eyes because it was built on the ruins of her marriage. The pain slowly transformed into disgust. Disgust at the thought that Alex's hands, which had touched her that morning, had also touched Ashley. Disgust at the thought that Alex's sweet smile was just a mask to hide his greed. After nearly 10 minutes of torture, the conversation began to die down. Alex was heard saying that he had to turn off his phone so Sophia wouldn't get suspicious if she called again. Sophia's heart pounded. She quickly stopped the recording just a second before the call was disconnected from the other side. The phone screen went dark, reflecting Sophia's face with swollen eyes and an empty gaze. Silence returned to the large house, but this time the silence was terrifying. Sophia remained seated on the floor. Her legs felt too weak to stand. She never imagined that a drama as cliché as those in soap operas would happen in her life. Her husband and her best friend, the two people closest to her, conspiring to destroy her. But in the midst of this devastation, a small determination began to grow in a corner of her heart. She would not let them win. She would not be the stupid woman they claimed she was. Sophia spent hours in the same position, letting the tears dry on her cheeks. The pain that had hit her so hard was slowly metamorphosing into a cold, lethal anger. She replayed the voice recording on her phone, listening to every insult and the vile plan of Alex and Ashley over and over again. Each time she listened, her love for Alex eroded, replaced by a calculated hatred. She also remembered all the moments she had spent with Ashley, how Ashley used to praise Sophia's kindness, how Ashley often asked to borrow money for urgent needs, and how Ashley was always present at every one of Sophia's family events. It turned out that it was all a strategy to get closer to Alex and gnaw at Sophia's fortune from within. Sophia felt like a blind person who had just had her sight restored. Now all the oddities of the past made sense. She stood up, dusting off her clothes. Her first step was to go to the bathroom, splashing her face with cold water to erase the traces of tears. She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked fragile, but her gaze was now sharp as an eagle's. She fixed her hair, making sure no sign of sadness was visible. She had to play her cards right. If she confronted them now, Alex would deny everything and turn the tables on her. Alex was cunning. He could say the recording was edited or just a joke. Sophia needed more than just a voice recording. She needed their total destruction at the very moment they felt they were on top. Next, Sophia picked up her phone and called the one person who had the absolute power to help her, her father. Sophia's father was a veteran and respected businessman, someone very protective of his only daughter. When the call connected, Sophia tried to control her breathing so that her voice would sound steady. She asked her father to come to her house immediately or to meet at a safe place because there was something urgent that affected the life and death of the company and her marriage. Hearing the serious tone in his daughter's voice, her father agreed to come without asking questions. Sophia knew that involving her father was a major step because her father's fury could end Alex's career overnight. But Sophia didn't want Alex's destruction to happen overnight. She wanted Alex to feel like he was flying high before she smashed him into the ground. An hour later, her father arrived. In the soundproofed home office, Sophia played the recording for him. Her father's reaction was exactly as she expected. The old man's face turned red with contained anger. His hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He was about to call his lawyer and the police to have Alex arrested on the spot, but Sophia calmly stopped him. Sophia laid out her plan. She asked her father to hold back. She asked him to continue being kind to Alex, even to pretend that the $1 million was about to be released. Sophia explained that the best revenge was to let Alex and Ashley dig their own graves with their greed. Her father looked at his daughter with new eyes. There was a mix of pride and sadness in seeing that his daughter had to become so tough, but he finally agreed to follow Sophia's script. After her father left, Sophia began to map out her strategy in detail. She cleaned the house as if nothing had happened. She even cooked Alex's favorite meal in case her husband came back early or to welcome him later. And so it was. 2 days later, Alex returned, the sound of his car pulling into the garage. Sophia's heart pounded, not with love, but with adrenaline. This was the first act of her performance. She had to be the best actress in her own life. Sophia walked to the front door, putting on the sweetest smile she could muster. When the door opened, there was Alex, with a falsely tired face. Alex immediately hugged Sophia, complaining about how exhausting the trip had been and how sad he was about his mother's condition. Sophia returned the hug. Although every cell in her body screamed with disgust, she held her breath so as not to smell the faint scent of another woman's perfume that might linger on Alex's clothes. With a tone full of concern, Sophia asked about Carol's condition. Alex lied fluently, making up a story about the doctor's diagnosis, about expensive medicines that had to be bought, and about how his mother kept asking about her. Sophia nodded, feigning sympathy, but inside, she noted every lie as fuel for her hatred. She even offered to visit Carol the following week, which Alex subtly declined with the excuse that the doctor had recommended complete isolation and rest. That night was the hardest test for Sophia. Sleeping in the same bed with a traitor, Alex fell asleep quickly and deeply, perhaps tired after spending a good time with Ashley on what he called a visit to his sick mother. Sophia lay beside him, staring at the dark ceiling of the room. She listened to her husband's soft snoring, a sound that once gave her security but now sounded like that of a monster. Sophia turned on her side, looking at Alex's face in the darkness. That face, which seemed so innocent in sleep, concealed a million deceptions. Sophia whispered very softly, almost inaudibly, promising that every tear she had shed that day would be repaid with drops of Alex's sweat and blood in the future. The next morning, Sophia began her performance. During breakfast, with a radiant face, she gave Alex great news. She told him that her father had just called to inform her that the asset liquidation process for the $1 million was moving faster than expected. Alex's eyes instantly lit up. The spoon in his hand paused for a moment. Greed was clearly reflected in his gaze. Although he tried to hide it with a grateful smile, Alex eagerly asked when he could receive the money. Sophia replied that perhaps in 1 or 2 weeks, but there were some documents Alex had to manage for the change of asset ownership to reduce taxes. Of course, it was a lie. It was just Sophia's way of keeping Alex busy and making him feel that victory was within reach. Alex seemed very excited, even forgetting to feign sadness for his mother. He immediately began talking about his fake business plans, as if the money were already in his hands. Sophia listened attentively, occasionally offering supportive suggestions, making Alex feel more and more on top of the world. In the middle of breakfast, Alex's phone vibrated. Alex glanced at the screen briefly, and then quickly silenced it. Sophia knew it must be Ashley. In an innocent tone, Sophia asked, "Who was that?" "Just a colleague asking about a project's progress," Alex replied. Sophia smiled and nodded. Inside, she was laughing. She knew Alex must be impatient to tell Ashley the news about the $1 million. And that was exactly what Sophia wanted. The higher their hopes, the more devastating their fall would be. That afternoon, Sophia purposefully left the house with the excuse of doing the monthly grocery shopping. Her goal was to give Alex space to freely call his accomplices. From a monitoring app she had secretly installed on Alex's phone while he was showering that morning, Sophia could hear their conversation in real time. Sure enough, as soon as Sophia was out the door, Alex called Ashley. Alex's voice sounded euphoric. He shouted with joy, announcing that the jackpot was about to arrive. He promised Ashley a luxury house in an exclusive neighborhood as a gift for the pregnancy. Hearing this, Sophia, who was driving her car, just smiled coldly. "Keep dreaming, Alex. Dream as high as you can," Sophia muttered as she gripped the steering wheel tightly. Her revenge plan had just begun, and she would make sure there was no escape for the traitors. The news of the $1 million transfer was like a fresh wind that fanned the flames of greed in Alex's heart even more. Since Sophia told him the false news, Alex's attitude had become drastically more impatient and impulsive. Every time his phone rang, he would jump slightly with an enthusiasm that was hard to hide, hoping it was a call from the bank or the notary. Sophia observed her husband's change in behavior with a subtle, meaningful smile. She watched as Alex began to frequently browse luxury property websites and high-end car magazines on his tablet while they relaxed in the living room. Alex no longer even tried to hide his interest in luxury items that were previously beyond the reach of his monthly salary. For Sophia, this was a sign that the bait she had cast had been completely swallowed. The big fish was on the hook. It was just a matter of waiting for the right moment to pull it out of the water and let it gasp for air. To accelerate her plan, Sophia decided to up her game. She wanted to see Ashley's face, the woman who had stabbed her in the back, right in front of her. Sophia wanted to see how the two traitors would act before her eyes. So during dinner, in a relaxed and natural tone of voice, Sophia proposed an idea to Alex. She suggested inviting Ashley over for dinner at their house in 2 days. The reason was simple. Sophia said she missed her friend because they hadn't seen each other in a long time and wanted to catch up. Besides, Sophia argued that she wanted to celebrate the good news about her father's money in private. Even though the money hadn't been transferred yet, they could at least share their happiness with someone close. Alex seemed surprised by the suggestion. His face tensed for a moment. His eyes darted nervously. Perhaps he feared his charade would be exposed if his wife and his lover were in the same room. However, his greedy and arrogant nature quickly took over. Alex thought it was an excellent opportunity to show Ashley the luxury that would soon be hers. So Alex accepted the idea with feigned enthusiasm, saying it was a fantastic idea to keep in touch. The day of the dinner arrived. Sophia was busy in the kitchen since the afternoon, preparing special dishes as if welcoming an honored guest. She cooked several of Ashley's favorite dishes, a gesture she once made out of friendly affection, but now performed as part of her psychological warfare strategy. The aroma of the food filled the entire house, creating the illusion of a perfect, warm home. Exactly at 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. Alex rushed to open the door, acting like a teenager in love, very different from the cool attitude he usually showed with Sophia's other guests. Sophia walked slowly from the dining room, controlling her breath and expression. When she saw Ashley enter, she felt a burning in her chest, suppressing her anger. Ashley was perfectly made up and wore a rather tight-fitting outfit that tried to accentuate her curves. However, Sophia could clearly see a slight change in her friend's figure, especially in her abdomen, which was beginning to bulge slightly, although it could still be concealed. Sophia greeted Ashley with a warm hug, a hug that might have seemed normal to Ashley, but for Sophia, it was a farewell hug to their dead friendship. Ashley returned the hug awkwardly. Her eyes glanced sideways at Alex, who stood behind Sophia with a mischievous smile. They thought Sophia didn't see these exchanged glances, but Sophia caught everything clearly in the reflection of the large mirror hanging on the entryway wall. Sophia invited Ashley to sit in the elegantly set dining room. On the table were filet mignon with a red wine reduction, shrimp scampi, and other luxurious dishes. There were no alcoholic beverages. Sophia only served fresh orange juice and cold sparkling water, in line with the life principles Ashley had always ridiculed behind her back as outdated. The atmosphere at dinner was strange. Alex tried too hard to break the ice with bad jokes. Ashley laughed too loudly in response to those jokes. Sophia just smiled politely, interjecting occasionally with short phrases. In the middle of dinner, Sophia began her attack. She poured sparkling water into Ashley's empty glass. With a steady gaze and a smile that was hard to interpret, Sophia said in a low but firm voice, "Eat up. You look a bit fuller lately," she commented. "Your cheeks are fuller, and you have a different glow." Sophia paused deliberately, making Ashley's and Alex's hearts stop for a moment. Before continuing, she added, "You look like someone who is expecting a great happiness." Ashley's face, which had been flushed from her makeup, instantly turned pale. The fork in her hand clinked softly against her plate. Alex choked on his drink, coughing a bit to hide his nervousness. Sophia quickly offered Alex a napkin, patting his back affectionately. She asked in an innocent tone if Alex was okay, why he was overreacting just because she had complimented Ashley on gaining weight. Alex quickly shook his head, saying he had just choked. Ashley, having regained her composure, tried to force a smile, saying that perhaps she had been eating too much lately due to work stress. Sophia nodded, as if she believed her, but her gaze remained fixed on Ashley's eyes, as if she were stripping her friend's soul bare. Then, Sophia began to talk about the plans for the $1 million. She said she wanted to renovate the house and perhaps donate a large portion to a charitable foundation because she and Alex didn't need that much money. Upon hearing the word donate, Ashley's and Alex's eyes widened. They looked at each other in panic and quickly interrupted, saying it would be a shame to donate it, that it was better to invest it for their future children. Sophia smiled to herself. Her bait had worked. The fear of losing the money they didn't even have yet was beginning to corrode their sanity. The evening ended with Ashley leaving early with the excuse of not feeling well, leaving Sophia at the doorstep with a victorious smile. One act had ended, and the enemy's morale was already beginning to falter. After the tense dinner, Alex became even more obsessed with the money. Sophia's comment about donating the money left him in a state of panic. He felt he had to secure the assets or make a large financial commitment so Sophia couldn't dispose of the money at her whim to a foundation. In Alex's narrow mind, poisoned by Ashley and his mother, the $1 million was his right as compensation for his patience in putting up with Sophia all these years. Alex began to leave the house frequently with the excuse of meeting clients or inspecting construction sites, when in reality, he was house hunting with Ashley. Ashley, feeling her position threatened after Sophia's hint at dinner, demanded that Alex buy her a house immediately, as proof of his seriousness and as a guarantee for the future of the child she was carrying. The woman constantly complained and incited Alex, telling him that Sophia could change her mind at any moment, so they had to act fast. Alex took Ashley to see a newly built luxury development on the outskirts of the city. The houses were in a modern classic style with imposing pillars, just like in Ashley's dreams. They stopped in front of the largest unit, on a corner, a 2-story house with a private pool and a spacious garden. Ashley fell in love at first sight. She walked through the rooms with shining eyes, imagining herself as the lady of that palace, hosting lavish parties and showing off her wealth to her friends. She hugged Alex affectionately, telling him this was her dream house, and she didn't want to see any other. The problem was that the price of the house was astronomical, far exceeding Alex's savings, which were actually insignificant. The real estate developer demanded a considerable down payment and the rest in short installments if they wanted a special promotional price. Alex was desperate. He knew the money from Sophia's father hadn't arrived yet, but Ashley kept pressing, and he himself was afraid of losing the opportunity to get that luxury house. This is where Sophia's role came back into play. Sophia, who already knew her husband's movements thanks to the GPS tracker on his car and reports from a private investigator hired by her father, started adding more fuel to the fire. When Alex came home with a frown, Sophia enthusiastically asked him about the project he was managing. Sophia pretended to have received information from a friend in the real estate sector that land prices in the area of the development Alex had visited were going to rise dramatically the following month. Sophia encouraged Alex to make a major investment decision while he had the chance, assuring him that the $1 million would clear in a matter of days. Sophia's words were like a spell that clouded Alex's logic. The support from his legitimate wife made him feel that his decision was right and secure. But Alex still needed cash immediately for the down payment and administrative fees, which amounted to a considerable sum. No official bank would lend him that much money in such a short time without a long and complicated verification process, especially with Alex's mediocre credit history. Desperate and blinded by greed, Alex finally contacted an old acquaintance who had access to non-bank lenders, that is, high-level loan sharks. They could get him millions in a matter of hours, as long as there was collateral in the form of a high-value property deed. Alex remembered the safe in Sophia's office. The deed to the luxurious house they lived in was kept there. The house was a wedding gift from Sophia's father, but the deed was still in her father's name, who had entrusted it to them. Alex, in his foolishness, thought he could borrow the deed for a while, mortgage it to get the down payment for Ashley's house, and then retrieve it the following week, as soon as the check from Sophia's father arrived. He believed Sophia would never find out that the deed had been missing for a few days. One afternoon, while Sophia was at a social event, Alex sneaked into the office. His hands trembled as he dialed the combination to the safe, which he had secretly spied on. The steel door opened with a soft click. There was the brown envelope with the valuable document. He took it with bated breath. He felt like a thief in his own home, but he pushed aside the guilt by imagining Ashley's happy face and the life of luxury that awaited him. He immediately took the deed to the notary associated with the loan shark. The process was very quick and simple because the value of the collateral was much higher than the loan. Alex signed a debt contract with exorbitant interest rates without reading it carefully. The only thing on his mind were the zeros that would appear in his bank account that afternoon. In the evening, Alex returned home radiant. He felt he had made a master move. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were already in his personal account, and he had transferred the down payment to the developer of Ashley's dream house. He felt like a winner. He felt he was one step ahead of Sophia. During dinner, Alex seemed to eat with a hearty appetite and frequently smiled to himself. Sophia watched her husband with a cold gaze from behind her teacup. Sophia knew exactly what Alex had done. She knew the deed from the safe had changed hands. But Alex didn't know one thing. The deed in the safe was a counterfeit that Sophia had deliberately placed there a few days before. The original deed was safely stored in a bank's safe deposit box under her father's name. Alex had just mortgaged a fake document to a loan shark known for his cruelty and had just signed a legally binding debt contract in his own name. Alex felt on top of the world. He even started to behave with a certain arrogance towards Sophia. He told Sophia to be more frugal with the monthly shopping when he himself had just squandered dirty money on his mistress. Sophia obeyed the order with submission. Inside, she was counting down the time until her husband's ruin. That night, Alex slept soundly, dreaming of his new house with Ashley. Meanwhile, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her husband's face, peaceful in his ignorance. Alex had dug a very deep hole and had just voluntarily jumped into it. Sophia whispered softly, "Enjoy your last peaceful dream, darling, because tomorrow, hell on earth will begin to greet you." The lifestyle trap had closed perfectly, and there was no spare key for Alex to get out. The morning at Sophia and Alex's residence felt different. There was a tension that slowly crept behind the solid walls of the luxurious house. Today was the day of the arrival of Carol, Alex's mother, who was coming from her town with the excuse that she missed her son and daughter-in-law. But Sophia knew very well the real motivation behind this sudden visit. Since Alex told her about the plan for the $1 million transfer from Sophia's father, Carol's attitude had changed 180 degrees. Whereas before she always made excuses about her old age and inability to travel far, now the middle-aged woman suddenly felt fit enough to undertake a multi-hour road trip to the big city. Sophia received the news of her mother-in-law's arrival with a hard-to-read smile. She knew the vicious circle was completing itself. All the main actors in this drama of betrayal were finally gathering on the same stage, making it easier for Sophia to monitor and destroy them all at once. Without a trace, Sophia had prepared the downstairs guest room impeccably, changing the sheets to new ones and placing a vase of fresh flowers on the nightstand. A perfect welcome from a dutiful daughter-in-law, the role she would continue to play until the curtain fell tragically. Alex's car pulled into the driveway just as the sun began to rise. Sophia was at the front door, dressed in elegant and modest clothing, ready to receive her mother-in-law. The car door opened, and Carol stepped out, with a somewhat exaggerated style. The woman wore her best clothes with flashy gold jewelry on her wrists and neck, as if to show she was the mother of a future millionaire. Her face looked fresh and healthy, far from the image of a seriously ill person that Alex had described when he asked for permission to go to his town. Sophia stepped forward and gave Carol a respectful kiss on each cheek. Carol pulled away a bit quickly after the kisses, and her eyes immediately scanned Sophia's entire house with a critical gaze, as if she were a building inspector looking for flaws. There was no warm hug or sincere questions about Sophia's well-being. The first sentence out of Carol's mouth was a sharp comment about the lawn, which she claimed was not well kept enough, and about the paint on the gate, which she said was already worn. This was despite Sophia having just hired a professional gardener the week before. The three entered the house. Alex was busy carrying his mother's large suitcases, while Carol walked like a queen inspecting her new palace. Sophia went to the kitchen to prepare drinks and snacks. From the living room, Sophia's sharp ears caught the low-voiced conversation between mother and son. Carol was impatiently asking about the certainty of the $1 million. She whispered to Alex to make sure the money didn't go anywhere, and reminded her son not to spoil Sophia too much. Sophia's blood boiled hearing the woman's cunning. It was clear that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Alex's manipulative and greedy nature was clearly inherited from his mother. Sophia took a deep breath, calming the storm in her chest, and then came out with a tray of hot tea and cookies. She placed the tray on the table carefully, trying to act normal in front of the woman who had helped destroy her marriage. While they enjoyed the tea, Carol began to launch her subtle verbal attacks. She started comparing Sophia to Ashley. Although she didn't mention Ashley's name explicitly at first, the direction of her conversation was very clear. Carol talked about a friend's daughter from her town who was very good at taking care of her husband, cooking, and what hurt the most, very fertile, able to quickly provide male grandchildren. Sophia simply lowered her head, pretending to listen obediently. Then Carol said with a cynical tone that a good wife is not just one with a rich father, but one who can serve her husband in all aspects and give him heirs to continue the family name. That sentence was like a slap in the face to Sophia, who had not yet had children after 3 years of marriage. However, Sophia knew Carol was referring to Ashley. She knew Carol had met Ashley in the town when Alex visited, and that they had surely celebrated Ashley's pregnancy together. Sophia swallowed the pain, turning it into fuel for her revenge plan. The climax came when Carol, perhaps too carried away by the euphoria of getting rich, began to lose control of her tongue. While munching on a cookie made by Sophia, she said that soon the house would be filled with the cries of a robust baby boy, and that Alex should prepare a special, luxurious room for his only heir. Alex choked on his drink hearing his mother slip up. His eyes widened, signaling his mother to be quiet. Sophia, with an Oscar-worthy performance, frowned and asked innocently which baby her mother-in-law was referring to. She asked if any relative was having a child. The atmosphere instantly became tense and silent. Alex quickly intervened, nervously, saying his mother was just fantasizing and hoping that Sophia would soon get pregnant with a boy. Carol, realizing her mistake, laughed forcedly, confirming Alex's words and saying she was eager to have a grandchild. Sophia nodded slowly with a faint smile, as if she believed that ridiculous excuse. But inside, she noted an important point. They were very sure that the child Ashley was expecting was a boy, and they were already planning that child's future in this house, Sophia's house. That afternoon, Alex said goodbye to go out for a moment with the excuse of an urgent work matter, but Sophia knew he was going to see Ashley to calm her down, as she would surely be jealous that Carol was staying at Sophia's house. Thus, Sophia was left alone with Carol. Carol, feeling tired from the trip, asked Sophia to bring her small handbag, which had been left in the car, to the guest room. Sophia politely agreed. Taking the bag from the car, Sophia noticed it was quite heavy. She took it to the guest room. Carol was in the bathroom. Sophia did not miss this golden opportunity. Her curiosity guided her hand to slightly open the bag's zipper. She had no intention of stealing, only looking for proof. And indeed, the instinct of a betrayed wife is sharp. In a side pocket of the bag, which was slightly open, a piece of paper was sticking out, a shopping receipt they hadn't thrown away. Sophia's hand trembled as she pulled it out. It was a receipt from a well-known baby supply store in a nearby city. Dated 2 days ago, just when Alex had excused himself to go to his hometown, her eyes scanned the list of purchased items. A set of baby clothes for a boy, an expensive brand of electric breast pump, a nursing pillow, and premium prenatal vitamins. The total purchase amounted to a considerable sum. At the bottom of the receipt, the loyalty points were listed under Alex's name. Sophia felt her breath catch. So the money she had given Alex to buy medicine for his mother had been used to buy items for his mistress's baby. And Carol, the woman who was supposedly gravely ill, had gone shopping with him to choose those forbidden items. Sophia quickly took out her phone and photographed the receipt from several angles as irrefutable proof. Then she placed the receipt back in its place very carefully, making sure its position was exactly the same, so as not to arouse suspicion. When Carol came out of the bathroom, Sophia was already by the window, adjusting the curtains. Her face was calm, not showing the whirlwind of anger burning inside her. Carol thanked her in a dry tone and then asked Sophia to leave because she wanted to rest. Sophia nodded and slowly closed the guest room door. As soon as the door closed, Sophia leaned against the hallway wall. Tears of rage fell one by one. She felt a deep disgust. Disgust for Alex, disgust for Ashley, and what churned her stomach the most, Carol's hypocrisy. The three of them were conspiring to squeeze her fortune, insulting her behind her back while enjoying the comforts she provided. Sophia wiped her tears abruptly. She would keep the proof of the shopping receipt in a special envelope labeled Evidence for Destruction. That envelope was now thicker, as thick as their sins. Sophia swore there would be no mercy for them. If they wanted to play with fire, Sophia would make sure they all burned to ashes. Today, Carol had arrived with arrogance, but later she would leave with a humiliation she would never forget for the rest of her life. The sun was just beginning to set, but the dark clouds covering the city sky seemed to reflect the mood of the house's inhabitants. After finding the proof of the baby supplies receipt, Sophia realized she couldn't just wait for the date of the fictitious fund transfer. She had to accelerate the process of their mental destruction. She had to create a rift between the conspirators. The divide-and-conquer strategy was the best option at that moment. Sophia knew that the bond between Alex, Ashley, and Carol was not one of sincere love, but a transactional bond based on greed. And that kind of bond is very fragile, easy to break with a small jolt of suspicion. Sophia took her first step by buying a new burner SIM card. She installed it in a spare phone she had hidden in a kitchen drawer. Her first target was Ashley. Pregnant women often have unstable emotions and tend to be more suspicious. Sophia wrote a short but lethal text message and sent it to Ashley's personal number. The message read, "Be careful. The man promising you a luxury house is playing with fire with another woman, besides his wife. Don't become a mere stepping stone. Check who he often calls in the middle of the night. The anonymous message was sent just as Alex was at home, peacefully watching television with Carol. Sophia watched from a corner of the room, waiting for the chain reaction that would follow. And so it did. Less than 10 minutes later, Alex's phone vibrated on the table. Alex looked at the screen and his face tensed. He quickly picked up the phone and went to the backyard with the excuse of bad reception. Sophia knew Ashley must be exploding on the other end, demanding an explanation about the other woman mentioned in the mysterious message. While Alex was busy calming a furious and manipulated Ashley, Sophia launched her second attack. This time her target was the relationship between Alex, Carol, and Ashley. Sophia printed a brochure that she had designed herself very convincingly. The brochure was an exclusive advertisement for the Happy Sunset Residence, a luxurious but isolated nursing home. In the brochure, Sophia circled several accommodation packages with a red marker and wrote a small note in the margin in a handwriting that deliberately mimicked Ashley's. "The best option for Mom when we move into the new house." Then Sophia carefully slipped the brochure into Alex's work briefcase, which was in the living room, among other office documents, but visible enough to be found if the briefcase was opened. Sophia knew Carol's habit of snooping through her son's things, especially if it involved money or property. The second bait was taken. That evening, while Alex was showering, Carol opened Alex's briefcase, probably to make sure the documents for the $1 million transfer were ready. But what she found was the nursing home brochure. Sophia, pretending to read a magazine on the opposite sofa, could see Carol's face turn red. The old woman's hand trembled as she held the brochure. She read the handwritten note in the margin and immediately concluded it was Ashley's doing. Carol, who until now had boasted of Ashley as her ideal future daughter-in-law, felt betrayed. She thought Ashley wanted to get rid of her in a nursing home as soon as they got the money and the new house. The anger of a mother who feels scorned is terrible. Carol crumpled the brochure and stuffed it into her robe pocket with heavy breathing, waiting for the right moment to confront them. That night, dinner became a cold battlefield. Alex looked exhausted and tense. The dark circles under his eyes were clearly visible from the argument with Ashley on the phone that afternoon. He tried to be nice to his mother, but Carol responded curtly and with a look full of suspicion. Alex was confused, not understanding why his mother's attitude had suddenly changed. Sophia enjoyed her dinner in silence, occasionally offering food to her mother-in-law with a polite smile that only managed to irritate Carol more. Carol probably thought Sophia was too stupid to understand the intrigue that was unfolding, when in reality, Sophia was the mastermind behind all the chaos. The tension reached its peak when Alex's phone rang again. This time, Alex didn't dare to answer. He just stared at the screen in despair. Ashley's name was clearly displayed. Seeing Alex's hesitation, Carol, already full of prejudice, exploded. "Answer it. That illegitimate wife of yours surely wants to remind you of the promise to throw your mother in a nursing home, right?" Alex was dumbfounded, not understanding where his mother got that crazy idea. "What are you talking about, Mom? Who wants to get rid of you?" Alex asked in a panic. Carol threw the crumpled nursing home brochure in his face. "Don't play dumb. I found this in your briefcase. Whose handwriting is this, if not that woman's? She's barely pregnant with an illegitimate child, and she already dares to control my life," Carol screamed hysterically. Sophia feigned surprise, dropping her silverware and covering her mouth with her hand as if shocked by the argument. Alex tried to defend himself, saying he knew nothing about the brochure, but Carol was already too hurt. In the midst of the chaos, Ashley, impatient because her calls were not being answered, kept calling, until finally Alex was forced to answer on speakerphone as his hands were busy restraining his mother, who was trying to hit him. Ashley's shrill voice filled the dining room. Without preamble, Ashley shouted in a very clear, threatening tone, "Hey, Alex, don't just stay quiet. If you don't transfer the extra monthly money to me tonight and explain who your other mistress is, I don't care about anything anymore. If that $1 million doesn't clear by tomorrow, I'm coming to your house and telling your goody-two-shoes wife everything. Let it all burn down." Ashley's scream echoed, creating a deathly silence. Alex was as pale as a ghost. The blood seemed to drain from his face. He looked at Sophia in horror. Carol also fell silent, realizing that Ashley's threat could ruin their plans to get Sophia's fortune. Both greedy mother and son now looked at Sophia with fear, afraid that she had heard and understood Ashley's threat. Sophia, who had heard everything clearly, decided to deliver the final blow that night. She rose slowly from her chair. Her face was impassive. She walked over to Alex, took the phone that was still connected to Ashley, and calmly hung up the call. Sophia looked her husband directly in the eyes and said in a soft but piercing voice, "Darling, it seems your friend has a lot of problems, doesn't she? Screaming about $1 million and all that. Who is she, exactly, and why does she sound like she has so much right to my father's money?" The question was simple, but deadly. Alex stammered, his tongue tied, unable to invent another lie. Cold sweat ran down his temples. Carol feigned a loud cough to divert attention. Sophia smiled sideways, a smile that chilled Alex's blood. Without waiting for an answer, Sophia turned and went to her room. "Settle your affairs with that friend, darling. I don't like strangers making noise in my house. And you, Mom, you should rest. High blood pressure isn't good for elderly people who are afraid of ending up in a home." Sophia closed her bedroom door firmly. Behind the door, she let out a small laugh. She had succeeded. Alex was now trapped between Ashley's fury, Carol's anger, and Sophia's suspicion. Tomorrow was the day of execution, the day Sophia had promised the fund transfer. Alex didn't know that what would clear tomorrow wouldn't be money, but the blood tears of his regret. The morning sun's rays were intense, as if the universe itself were heating the atmosphere for what was to happen that day. Alex woke up earlier than usual. His eyes shone with anticipation, although the dark circles from lack of sleep were still visible on his face. Today was the day he had been waiting for, the day he believed his destiny would change and he would become a millionaire. He put on his best shirt, impeccably pressed by Sophia, combed his hair carefully, and sprayed an excessive amount of expensive cologne. In front of the mirror, Alex practiced a victory smile, imagining himself signing a check for $1 million. Meanwhile, Carol was no less excited. The woman put on an elegant suit she had bought especially for the occasion, complete with a silk shawl she flaunted, as if she were a grand dame about to receive an award. Sophia watched all this activity from the dining table with an overwhelming calm, like the surface of a tranquil lake that hides a deadly whirlpool within. She had already prepared everything. The stage for the execution was set at her father's office. The trip to Sophia's father's office was made in 2 separate cars. Alex insisted that Ashley accompany them. His excuse to Sophia was that Ashley, as a close friend, could act as a neutral and trustworthy witness. Sophia simply nodded without arguing, making Alex feel that his plan was going smoothly. In reality, Sophia wanted Ashley to be there to see with her own eyes how the sandcastle they had built would crumble. Inside Alex's car, the atmosphere was tense but filled with a contained euphoria. Alex drove with sweaty hands, while Carol, sitting beside him, constantly prayed for the money to clear without any hitches. Ashley, sitting in the back seat to keep up appearances, kept touching up her makeup, making sure she looked perfect at the moment of victory. She imagined that after the signing, Alex would take her directly to a luxury car dealership. Sophia's father's office skyscraper stood imposing in the city center, clad in blue glass that reflected the clouds. Upon entering the majestic lobby with its polished marble floor, Alex's confidence faltered a bit. He always felt small in front of his father-in-law, who possessed a strong aura of leadership. But the image of the $1 million strengthened his resolve. They were greeted by Sophia's father's personal secretary, a kind but stern-faced woman. They were led to the main boardroom on the top floor, a VIP room normally used only for shareholder meetings or signing multi-million-dollar contracts. The room was enormous, dominated by a long, shiny mahogany table and comfortable leather armchairs. The view of the city from the giant windows was breathtaking, as if offering the world in the palm of your hand. At the head of the table, Sophia's father was already waiting. His face was calm, imposing, and indecipherable. He didn't smile when his son-in-law and his mother-in-law entered. He just nodded briefly, inviting them to sit. Alex, Carol, and Ashley sat together on one side of the table, while Sophia sat on the other, right next to her father. This arrangement unconsciously created a clear division between us and them. Alex tried to break the ice by asking about his father-in-law's health, but he only received a brief throat clearing that intimidated him again. A notary and the company's lawyer were also present, looking through thick files, which added an air of formality and seriousness to the meeting. Alex's heart pounded. His eyes did not leave the stack of documents he believed contained the asset transfer and the promised check. Carol clutched her purse nervously, while Ashley tried to sit upright despite the back pain from her pregnancy. Sophia's father opened the meeting with his deep, resonant voice. He spoke about the importance of trust and integrity in managing family assets. The words trust and integrity were pronounced with special emphasis, making Alex feel a bit targeted, but he ignored it. Then the father explained the complicated procedure of the donation, the taxes, the management responsibility, and the long-term commitment. Alex nodded enthusiastically, accepting all the conditions without really listening. The only thing on his mind was where he had to sign to get the money transferred to his account. Carol even interrupted with a naive question about whether she could withdraw a portion in cash that same day, to which Sophia's father's lawyer responded with a withering look. After nearly an hour of listening to a boring lecture on laws and business, the awaited moment arrived. Sophia's father signaled the notary. The notary handed a dark blue folder to Alex. Alex's hands trembled as he received it. He opened it slowly, expecting to see a check or a security certificate. However, the folder was empty. There was only a blank sheet of paper inside. Alex frowned in confusion, looking at Sophia's father with a questioning expression. Sophia's father smiled slightly, a smile that did not reach his eyes. He said calmly that before handing over the original documents, there was an indispensable condition that the beneficiary had to meet. That condition was the verification of family harmony through a family documentation. Alex and Carol looked at each other, confused. Family documentation? They had to take a picture together? Alex nodded quickly, saying he was willing to do anything. He even put his arm around his mother's shoulder, showing how harmonious they were. Ashley, beside him, remained silent, feeling a bit excluded from the happy family scene. Sophia's father picked up a small remote control from the table and pressed a button. The automatic blinds closed, darkening the room. A large projector screen slowly descended from the ceiling. Alex smiled broadly, thinking they were going to watch a wedding video or childhood photos of Sophia as a nostalgic gesture before the inheritance was handed over. He was already prepared to put on an emotional face. The projector screen lit up with a brilliant white, dazzling for a moment. Then an audio visualization appeared, moving sound waves. There was no image, only sound. Silence filled the room, and then the voice was heard, a very familiar voice. Alex's voice, clear, loud, and undistorted. Just wait for the $1 million check from that stupid wife's father to clear. I'll divorce her, and the three of us will enjoy the money with our son. Alex's face, which had been radiant, turned as pale as the blank paper in the folder. His eyes widened, staring at the screen as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His heart seemed to stop. Before he could process what was happening, the next voice appeared. A woman's voice. "My friend is a real idiot, isn't she, honey?" It was Ashley's voice. Ashley, sitting in the room, flinched. She instinctively covered her mouth. Her eyes widened, looking at Sophia in horror. Then the laughter of both of them was heard. A mocking, condescending laugh, a laugh that, at the time, seemed so pleasant to them, but now sounded like the bell of death. The recording continued, playing the disgusting conversation about their plans to raise their illegitimate child with Sophia's father's money, about how sick Alex was of his wife, and how naive Sophia was in their eyes. With every passing second, the air in the room seemed to grow thin for Alex, Ashley, and Carol. Carol, sitting in the middle, looked as if she had suffered a mild stroke. Her face was frozen, her breathing shallow. She turned her head stiffly towards her son, then to Ashley, and finally to Sophia, who was sitting quietly with an impassive face. Sophia was not looking at the screen. She was looking directly at the three people in front of her, enjoying every grimace of terror that appeared on their faces. Sophia's gaze was cold, penetrating, and deadly. There was nothing left of the sweet and obedient Sophia. Here was a betrayed woman who now stood as the judge of her betrayers. The recording ended with the dramatic click of the phone hanging up. The lights in the room came back on, exposing the faces of the sinners, now covered in cold sweat. The silence that followed was far more terrifying than the sound of the recording. No one dared to speak. Alex felt his knees go weak. He clung to the arms of his chair to keep from falling. He tried to find words to defend himself, but his mind was blank. The truth was too obvious, too naked. Sophia's father placed the remote on the table with a sharp tap that made them all jump. It was the judge's gavel that began the real trial. The atmosphere in the VIP boardroom turned into a frozen hell. The air conditioning couldn't cool the thick drops of sweat running down Alex's temples. He swallowed, and it felt like sharp sand in his throat. His cunning mind desperately searched for an escape, an excuse, a scapegoat. In a trembling voice, Alex finally broke the silence. He stood up on weak legs and pointed at the now empty screen. He shouted in a forced tone that it was all a lie. He accused the recording of being fake, a product of artificial intelligence or modern technology. He swore to God and on his mother's life that he had never said such vile things. He acted as if he were the victim of a cruel slander, hoping to see a glimpse of doubt in his father-in-law's eyes. Carol, hearing her son's defense, instantly joined in with crocodile tears that suddenly welled up. She lamented that her son was a good man, incapable of committing adultery or having bad intentions. She even dared to accuse Sophia of fabricating the recording out of jealousy or to keep the entire inheritance for herself. Ashley, for her part, chose to remain in sepulchral silence. Her face was as pale as wax. She kept her head down, not daring to look at anyone. Her survival instinct told her the situation was unsalvageable. Sophia listened to all these denials with a contemptuous, ironic smile. She wasn't surprised. She had already anticipated that Alex would hide behind the excuse of technology. Without a word, Sophia opened her briefcase, took out a thick brown envelope, and threw it onto the center of the table, right in front of Alex. The envelope slid smoothly across the polished surface and stopped against Alex's water glass. "You can't fake an ultrasound or the text message history on your phone, darling," Sophia said in a flat tone that chilled the bone. Alex's hands trembled violently as he opened the envelope. Its contents spilled out. Ultrasound photos of a fetus with the patient's name, Ashley, clearly printed in the top corner, along with the date of the exam, which coincided with one of Alex's business trips. There was also a stack of screenshots of text message conversations between Alex and Ashley, filled with affectionate words, secret wedding plans, complaints about Sophia, and proof of the monthly transfers Alex sent to Ashley's account. And to make matters worse, there was the photo of the baby supplies receipt that Sophia had found in Carol's purse, with Alex's membership number included. All the evidence was real, physical, and irrefutable. Alex's denial about AI was shattered before those papers. Alex collapsed into his chair, defeated. His shoulders slumped. His gaze was lost on the ultrasound photo he held in his hand. He was finished. He was completely finished. Carol, seeing the proof of the shopping receipt, gasped for air, her face flushed with shame and fear. She realized her carelessness had been one of the nails in the coffin. Sophia's father, who had silently observed the drama of denials, finally stood up. His tall, imposing figure seemed to radiate a contained anger. In a voice that was not loud but full of authority, he delivered his verdict. He stated firmly that there was no $1 million. There never had been and never would be for a traitor. The story of the fund transfer was just a bait suggested by Sophia to bring their greed to light. Then, Sophia's father pointed at Alex. He fired him from his position in the company's subsidiary, effective immediately. All company facilities, including the car, laptop, and corporate credit card, were revoked and blocked on the spot. Alex had not only lost the future inheritance, but also his job, his career, and his reputation in the business world, because Sophia's father would ensure his name was blacklisted in his business circle. "And as for you," he said, turning to Ashley, "I will make sure you can never work in any company in this city again. You betrayed the friend who considered you a sister for a little money. Enjoy your life with this unemployed man." Ashley began to sob quietly, a cry of late repentance. But Alex's nightmare was not over. Hearing there was no money, his mind immediately flew to the massive debt he had taken on a few days earlier. He had borrowed money from a loan shark with a fake deed as collateral, assuming he could pay it back today with Sophia's father's money. Now that source of income had vanished. That meant he had a gigantic debt about to come due, with interest that kept growing, and invalid collateral. His life was in danger. Alex's face went from pale to ashen. He realized he was not just poor, but in grave danger. Suddenly, Alex knelt on the floor and crawled toward Sophia's feet. He cried out loud, shedding all his dignity. He begged for forgiveness, saying it had been a slip, that he was bewitched, that the devil had tempted him. He swore he would leave Ashley that very instant and be a good husband again. He clung to the hem of Sophia's dress, kissing it hysterically. Carol also joined in the crying, pleading with her daughter-in-law's father not to be so cruel, reminding him of the sin of breaking family ties. The scene was pathetic and disgusting at the same time. Sophia looked down at the man prostrated at her feet. The man she once loved, the man she trusted to lead her home, was now nothing more than trash begging for mercy. With a slow but firm movement, Sophia pulled her dress from Alex's grip as if she had just touched something filthy. She took a step back, maintaining her distance. Then, Sophia removed the wedding ring from her ring finger. The white gold ring with diamonds that Alex had placed there with promises of fidelity. She looked at the ring for a moment and, with a slight gesture, let it fall to the floor, right in front of Alex's tear-streaked face. The clinking of the ring against the marble echoed in the silent room. "Take it, darling. It's the only thing left of our marriage. Sell it to buy milk for your child with Ashley. Or maybe it will be enough to pay for your bus ticket back home, because the car downstairs has already been confiscated by my father's office driver." Sophia spoke these words with a tone of finality. There was no tremor of sadness, only immense relief. She felt as if a great weight had just been lifted from her shoulders. Alex looked at the ring in desperation, and then at Sophia, who stood like an unshakable tower. The building's security guards then entered, summoned by the secretary, and dragged away a still hysterically crying Alex, a Carol who was pretending to faint, and an Ashley who walked with her head bowed in shame. Alex's screams still echoed in the hallway until the elevator door closed, taking the trash out of Sophia's life. In the room, Sophia exhaled a long sigh, turned, and hugged her father. Her armor cracked a little, her tears fell, but this time they were not tears of sadness, but of liberation. She had won, she was safe, and she was ready to watch karma do its work in its own, much crueler way out there. The midday sun shone fiercely, mercilessly burning the skin of anyone exposed to it. On the sidewalk, in front of Sophia's father's imposing office building, 3 human figures stood with empty faces and an appearance that contrasted with their surroundings. Alex, Carol, and Ashley had just been forcibly ejected by the security guards. They stood, stunned, on the edge of a noisy avenue. The street dust swirled, hitting their faces, still damp with cold sweat and the remnants of tears. The luxury company car they had arrived in, with such pride that morning, had already been returned to the company garage. Alex's wallet was empty, his credit cards blocked, and the wedding ring Sophia had thrown had been left on the boardroom floor because Alex was too panicked when he was dragged out. They truly had nothing but the clothes on their backs and an unbearable shame. Passers-by looked at them strangely, and for good reason. Carol, dressed in a flashy party suit, was sitting on the dirty sidewalk. Ashley was crying her eyes out while holding her belly. And Alex, in his impeccable suit, looked like a madman who had lost his mind. The silence between them was broken when Carol started assigning blame for the situation. In a hoarse voice, she hit Alex's arm, screaming and asking what he was going to do for her now. She demanded Alex take responsibility for bringing her from her hometown, only to be humiliated like this. Carol also blamed Ashley. She pointed her trembling finger at Ashley, accusing her of bringing bad luck. According to Carol, if Ashley hadn't seduced Alex, Sophia wouldn't be so furious, and she could still be enjoying the comforts of her daughter-in-law's house. Ashley, pregnant and emotionally raw, did not accept the blame. She answered Carol's screams with a shrill voice, shouting that she was the victim of Alex's sweet promises. She said she had become his mistress because Alex had promised her luxury, not poverty and humiliation on the street. A heated argument broke out on the sidewalk, becoming a free spectacle for the delivery drivers waiting nearby. Alex ignored the fight between his mother and his mistress. His mind was occupied with a much more real terror than his mother's reproaches. He remembered the loan shark. Today was the deadline for the first interest payment and the repayment of the principal if he wanted to get the house deed back. The problem was that the deed he had given as collateral was fake, and he didn't have a single cent. Alex put his hand in his pants pocket and took out his phone with trembling hands. He had dozens of missed calls from an unknown number. He felt his heart was about to leap out of his chest. He knew who was calling. The debt collectors must have sensed that something was wrong. Alex tried to turn off his phone and run, but before he could press the button, he received a text message. It was short but terrifying. "We know where you are. Don't run, or your mother becomes the collateral." Alex froze. His eyes frantically scanned the surroundings for signs of danger, and sure enough, from a corner, 3 black sport bikes moved slowly against the traffic and stopped right in front of them. The riders were burly men in black leather jackets and menacing faces. They got off their bikes calmly but intimidatingly. An aura of violence filled the air. Alex recognized one of them, the right-hand man of the loan shark's boss, the one who had handled his loan. The man took off his helmet, looking at Alex with a crooked smile that revealed yellowish teeth. He approached Alex and patted his cheek, softly but painfully. He asked with false kindness where his money was. Alex backed away, frightened, unable to speak. He tried to lie, saying there was a technical problem at the bank and the money would be available tomorrow. But the goon was no fool. He laughed out loud, a laugh that made Ashley scream in fear and hide behind Carol. The man grabbed Alex by the collar of his jacket and pulled him close until their faces were inches apart. He whispered sharply that his boss had already verified the deed's authenticity at the county records office that morning because he was suspicious of his behavior. The result? The deed was a fake. That meant Alex had committed fraud against the sharks of the underworld, and scamming a loan shark carried a punishment far more severe than the laws. The man signaled his companions. The other 2 goons grabbed Alex and held his arms behind his back. Alex screamed in pain, begging for mercy, saying he didn't know the deed was fake, but his cries were ignored. They began to drag him towards a black van that had just pulled up. Carol, hysterical at seeing her only son treated like an animal, tried to grab one of the goons' clothes, pleading for them to let him go, but an old woman's strength was no match. One of the goons pushed her roughly, making her fall onto the hot asphalt. Her knees were scraped, and her elegant suit was dirtied with street dust. Carol cried out loud, calling for Alex. Meanwhile, Ashley, terrified, tried to escape. She saw an opportunity while the goons were busy with Alex and his mother. She backed away slowly and then turned to run towards a taxi stand. She no longer cared about Alex or Carol. The important thing was that she and her baby were safe. But karma wasn't done with her yet. She had barely run a few steps when a police car with its siren on cut her off. 2 female police officers got out and detained her. Ashley, confused and panicked, asked what was wrong. She felt she hadn't committed any crime. The police showed her an arrest warrant. Sophia hadn't been joking. She had reported Ashley for embezzlement. For years, Sophia had entrusted Ashley with money for shopping or to pay for shared expenses, but it turned out Ashley often pocketed a portion or used it for her own expenses. Sophia had proof of transfers and complete financial records. Ashley resisted, shouting it was a misunderstanding, that she was Sophia's best friend. But the police didn't care. Cold metal handcuffs closed on her wrists. The pregnant woman was led to the police car, crying over her fate, which had changed drastically in a matter of hours. Back to Alex, the situation became even more chaotic. The goons were about to shove him into the van when another police siren was heard approaching. The commotion on a main avenue had attracted the attention of a patrol car, in addition to the alert from Sophia's father's building security. Seeing the police, the goons didn't want to risk getting caught. They released Alex abruptly, gave him a kick in the stomach as a farewell, and sped away on their bikes, weaving through traffic. Alex coughed, clutching his sore stomach, and collapsed on the sidewalk. He thought he was safe, but it turned out the police hadn't come to help him, but to arrest him. Sophia's father had reported Alex for document forgery and attempted fraud using others' property. With the case of the fake deed, Alex had no escape. In front of his own mother, Alex was handcuffed. The scene that afternoon was tragic and, at the same time, a relief for anyone who knew the real story. Alex was led to the police car with a bruised face and wrinkled clothes. Ashley had already been detained in another car. Only Carol was left alone on the sidewalk. The woman who had arrived that morning with her chin held high was now on her knees on the hot asphalt, lamenting her fate. Her favorite son, arrested for fraud. Her ideal future daughter-in-law, a criminal. And she herself, abandoned in the big city without a cent to return to her town. No one helped her. People just watched and recorded the scene with their phones, perhaps to make it go viral on social media with the title "Instant Karma for a Greedy Family." In the distance, a luxurious black sedan passed by slowly. The tinted window lowered slightly, just enough to reveal a pair of eyes coldly observing the scene. It was Sophia. She saw everything. She saw her ex-husband being dragged away by the police. She saw her ex-best friend crying behind the bars of a patrol car, and she saw her wicked ex-mother-in-law now humiliated on the street. There was no pity in Sophia's heart. She had given them many chances to reconsider, but they chose greed. Sophia raised the window, ordered the driver to move on. She would not stop, she would not look back. For her, the trash had already been taken to its place. And now it was time to clean the remaining dust from her life, to move towards a clean future. Sophia's car made its way through the city's hustle and bustle, leaving the pathetic drama on the sidewalk behind like a dark chapter, now closed. 6 months had passed since the shocking event in front of the office building. Time moved very differently for each person involved in this story. For Alex, time dragged on slowly and painfully behind prison bars. He was found guilty of document forgery and fraud, in addition to the burden of the debt to the loan shark, who didn't leave him in peace even in prison. In his narrow, damp cell, Alex lost all his arrogance. He was no longer the elegant and overbearing man. Now his head was shaved. His body was gaunt from stress and prison food. He was often the target of harassment by other inmates who despised family fraud crimes. Every night, Alex slept curled up on the cold floor, accompanied by endless regret. He often dreamed of the comfortable life he had with Sophia, of the hot coffee in the mornings, the fragrant clothes, and his wife's sincere smile. Upon waking, he only found damp concrete walls and the smell of urine. He missed Sophia, not out of love, but because he realized how stupid he had been to trade a diamond for a handful of sharp pebbles. Ashley's fate was no less wretched. Due to her advanced pregnancy, her legal process was slightly delayed. However, she had to serve house arrest under strict supervision and live in absolute poverty. She gave birth in a small health clinic with basic facilities, without the company of a husband or family. The child born was a boy, just as Carol had hoped, but his birth was not celebrated with lavish parties or a dream nursery. The baby was born into tears of hardship. Ashley had to take odd jobs as a cleaner, carrying her baby on her back because she couldn't afford daycare. Her face, once always well cared for, was now dull and looked much older. She lived in a small rented apartment in a rough neighborhood with a roof that leaked every time it rained. Every time she heard her son cry from hunger, Ashley cursed herself. She remembered how she used to mock Sophia, and now felt how hard life was without support, a life she herself had destroyed for a whim. Meanwhile, in a town far from the city's bustle, Carol spent the rest of her life in overwhelming loneliness. After the arrest, social services sent her back to her town, but the news of her son's crimes had spread everywhere. The neighbors she used to boast to about her son's success now looked at her with disdain. No one wanted to be her friend. The stores wouldn't give her credit. Carol suffered a mild stroke due to the prolonged shock, which left half of her body paralyzed. She had to drag her leg just to get a glass of water. Her once tidy house was now dirty and messy because she couldn't clean it. She often sat on her porch, looking at the empty street, waiting for Alex's luxury car to come and pick her up, but it was just a hallucination. She remembered how good Sophia, her daughter-in-law, had been, always sending her medicine, clothes, and money without complaint. Carol cried in silence. Her tears fell on the dusty dirt floor. Her arrogance had burned the bridge to happiness, and now she was trapped alone on the island of regret. In contrast to the suffering of the three, Sophia's life shone brightly. Freed from the burden of the parasites that had been sucking her energy, Sophia focused on developing the business inherited from her father. She completely revamped the company's management, introducing innovations that sent profits soaring. Her appearance became even more elegant and distinguished. Her face, which had often looked sad from emotional pressure, was now always adorned with a sincere smile that radiated inner peace. Sophia also became actively involved in various social activities, helping women victims of domestic violence and betrayal to recover, just as she herself had done. She became an inspiration to many. Her broken marriage did not traumatize her, but made her stronger and more selective. Her father was very proud of his daughter's transformation. They often spent time together, peacefully enjoying the fruits of their labor without the fear of being taken advantage of by cunning people. One sunny afternoon, Sophia was sitting at her favorite cafe with an outdoor patio, enjoying a cup of chamomile tea while reading a book. A gentle breeze played with the edge of her scarf. Her phone on the table vibrated. Sophia glanced at the screen. An unknown number appeared, but the area code was from the area where Alex's prison was located. Sophia knew it must be him. Perhaps he had borrowed a guard's phone or gotten one smuggled in, trying to contact her for help, money, or just to apologize and ease his guilt. In the past, Sophia might have answered, listening with a pounding heart, and perhaps her heart would have softened. But the Sophia of now was a new woman. She looked at the screen without emotion. There was no explosive hatred, only absolute indifference. To her, Alex was a closed past, a chapter in a book she had sealed and thrown away the key. Sophia smiled faintly, very faintly. Her index finger moved slowly towards the phone's screen. She did not slide the green button to answer. Instead, she pressed the red button to reject the call. And she didn't stop there. She went into the call settings menu and selected the option to block the number. The phone screen returned to calm, displaying a beautiful wallpaper of a nature landscape. Sophia took another sip of her hot tea, feeling the warmth of the liquid spread through her body, as warm as the feeling of freedom she now fully possessed. She looked up at the orange and golden sunset sky. Her life had just begun anew, and this time she was the screenwriter, with no antagonists who could ruin it. In the distance, birds flew freely back to their nests, just like Sophia's heart, which had finally returned home to a place of peace and happiness.